My name is Gail Schwartz, and I am the coordinator for the Southwestern PA Housing Alliance and the Rental Housing Work Group. Convened by the Southwestern Pennsylvania Housing Alliance, the Rental Housing Work Group is a coalition of organizations and individuals committed to expanding affordable, quality rental options for individuals and families who face barriers to housing. Using collaboration, coordination, education, and risk management, we bring nonprofits together with rental housing owners and managers to advance the goal of a home within reach of every Southwestern Pennsylvanian. Since December 2014, the Rental Housing Work Group has been working to educate landlords about best practices when working with tenants, information about local resources that can meet landlords' needs, and highlight beneficial resources such as PA Housing Search. Now I would like to introduce our presenter today, Michelle Barnhart from the Community Guidance Center. Michelle has worked in the mental health field for 15 years and is a certified trainer in crisis prevention and intervention. Michelle?
Hello all. I would like to thank you for joining me today. I hope everyone's doing well. Today I think we're going to overview the basic principles of mental illness. We're going to review the basic functions of the brain, learn how to prevent the development of a crisis, de-escalate an individual already in crisis, and learn to identify when someone should and should not be engaged in conversation. So to get us started, we're going to talk about mental health. Introduction to mental health. The brain's a part of the body, like any other body organ, that has patterns of health, illness, and reaction to injury. Medical professionals utilize MRIs and CAT scans to look at the brain to determine if there are any visual abnormalities like tumors and aneurysms. Mental health professionals like myself have no blood work or physical diagnostic exams to conclude that there is a problem. It's hard for mental health professionals to identify when the organ is not functioning properly because we rely almost solely on an individual's self-report and a small snapshot of their behavioral presentation. So when individuals come to us, it's very difficult for us to identify that there's a problem going on unless that individual is able to tell us that there's a problem going on. It is also a challenge for mental health professionals to convince somebody that they would benefit from medications or treatment when their brain is not healthy. So if their brain is not healthy and there's some kind of dysfunction, it's very hard for us to convince them that they also would benefit from treatment to make them feel better. For an individual to get the help that they need, it sometimes takes someone in their life to become involved or know the right people to contact to get that help for them. This person could be you. To understand when and when not to intervene in any situation, we have to first understand the brain and the basic principles of how it operates. The brain is the seat of human personality, emotions, and thought. Our bodies cannot function without our brain regulating heart rate, breathing, and metabolism. Our brains also control our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in incredibly complex patterns. When our brains are altered structurally, the ability to make appropriate decisions is also altered. So if we are having a medical issue or a mental health issue, it is often difficult for these people to make appropriate decisions. So some of you are wondering how often the people that we come in contact with on a daily basis are affected by mental health. According to the National Institute of Mental Health in 2013, in any given year, approximately 25% of adults and 20% of children have at least one diagnosable mental health disorder. Among these adults, 22.3% of those persons, or about 5.8% of the total population, have a severe mental illness. Now, when I say severe mental illness, we're talking about bipolar disorder, major depression, schizophrenia, or a personality disorder. And I know those are big terms for everyone that doesn't work in mental health. but those are severe conditions. We're not just talking about bereavement or the loss of an individual or something minor that we're experiencing, like minor anxiety. The most disturbing part of this is that only 36% of these people, so 36% of that 5.8%, receive any type of treatment at all. So how does mental illness affect you? Well, considering that mental illness affects almost every family in the United States and that it is triggered by brain chemistry, environment, and or life experiences, we can all plan to be affected by mental illness in our lifetime through, at the very least, an interaction with another individual. So on a daily basis, we're coming into contact with people that are suffering from mental illness. Are these individuals living with a mental illness more dangerous than anyone else? No. While the media may paint a picture to the contrary, statistically, people with mental illness are no more dangerous than people with other illnesses. In fact, when compared with the general population, the frequency of crimes is no different. However, some mentally ill people can become easily angered and make impulsive decisions, especially when faced with complex life decisions. So to think about somebody that is functioning in society, sometimes we all have a difficult time being able to navigate, paying our rent or paying our mortgage, talking to the electric company, talking to the phone company. To function in society, one must have sufficient attention, memory, judgment, and the ability to comprehend in order to function with full independence. Frequently, people with mental health disorders or who have severe mental health disorders will require some type of support. This is when we see these individuals that have therapy, they have case management services in the home, and maybe job training or different trainings to help them learn how to function well in society. So who are the people in our community? Where are people with severe mental illness living? The majority of Americans with mental illness live in the community. A good example of this is Torrance State Hospital here in Indiana County. This is our local state psychiatric hospital. In 1959, there were 3,500 patients, and this year there were less than 120. These individuals are now our tenants and our neighbors. So 3,500 patients to down to 120 patients living in the community. That's a significant amount of individuals that were being supported, and people were helping them live daily in state hospitals that are now in our communities that might need a little extra help. So I want to reiterate again something I said earlier, that mental illness can be triggered by brain chemistry, environment, and life experiences. So individuals that have something off with their brain chemistry biologically might suffer from mental illness. Sometimes the things that we're exposed to in childhood can trigger mental illness, as in adulthood, and life experiences, things that we've witnessed or lived through. So now if we specifically focus on environmental exposures and the fact that we are all exposed to trauma almost daily. It's difficult to think about being exposed to trauma. Most of us would think, I'm not traumatized. I had a well-rounded childhood. I had a well-rounded adulthood. I'm not, a person that has been exposed to trauma. But when we define trauma, we have to first think that even the little things in life can be traumatic. So let's meet Jack. Jack is a teller at a local bank and has been working really hard to become a loan officer at the main office. Jack has 2 children and a wife that has always been really supportive. Jack has never been diagnosed with mental illness and seems to be doing really well managing all his life stressors. When on the way to work on a normal Tuesday, Jack witnesses a horrific accident where he feels helpless and is unable to help the individual that has been severely injured in the crash. Jack has been witness to a trauma. Jack becomes paralyzed when thinking about driving and eventually loses his job and is unable to pay his bills. Many people that Jack come in contact with after that accident begin to judge him and often refer to him as a loser, a drain on the system, lazy, and worthless. If you focus on the individual that Jack is now, most of us would think that he is inept as an individual. However, we all need to stop focusing on a small snapshot of an individual. We all need to consider changing this question: what is wrong with you versus what has happened to you? So this scenario is pretty dramatic, but let me remind you that we all are exposed to trauma every day. It may be small things like we fought with our spouse before work. We had a flat tire that we don't really have the money to pay to get repaired. We have a coworker or friend struggling and we are unable to help. Whatever it may be, we are carrying a heavy load. So in this scenario, Jack was a normal, functioning, average individual trying to get ahead at work. He had 2 children. He has a wife. He's paying his bills. He's able to function. Then on the way to work, he has a traumatic experience that changes his life forever. Now let's talk about something that has happened in my own life. By starting to identify that every individual is carrying a heavy load and we don't exactly know what has shaped them, we begin to understand how to interact more openly and honestly with each other. And we begin to understand why exactly people are behaving the way that they are. I'd like to put this to work in our everyday lives. So I'm going to share a personal story from my own life. My husband would get so annoyed and irritated by people driving slow, especially at night. He said to me one day, "Doesn't this just drive you crazy?" He was referring to an individual driving like 35 and a 55 at dusk. I think we've all been there. We've been annoyed on the road. I explained to him that not only doesn't it drive me crazy, but I was worried and feel compassionate for whatever that person is dealing with right now. I'm a person that has a difficult time driving at night because I have a hard time seeing at times. So I often worry about people and what they're dealing with. And that reminded me of someone I recently met. I recently met a woman that lost her husband in an accident. She's only 37, and her and her husband have adopted 2 children. And due to the financial stress, they were holding off just a little longer to buy tires for their vehicle. He hydroplaned and was killed 2 days after that decision was made. Now, I often see her driving to work, when I'm driving to work, very slow in the rain, and I make sure I give her a thumbs up as I pass her on the bypass. Can we all understand why she is paralyzed while driving in the rain? We shouldn't focus on what is wrong with her, but should better think what has happened to her. If everybody approached life situations like that, we would all have a much better relationship with individuals. So let's talk a little bit about the ACEs study. The ACEs study was conducted by Kaiser Permanente in California. The fellow that conducted the study was a medical director for years for a big organization in California, Kaiser Permanente, and he had been doing medicine and medical research for probably 20 years at this time, when he started focusing on weight loss and helping people to lose weight. So what he found was people were able to lose weight. These were morbidly obese people, 300, 400, 500 pounds overweight. When he met with them, they were able to effectively lose weight, but soon after losing weight, they started trending back up and started putting the weight back on. So he just couldn't understand how he wasn't being successful at helping them lose weight permanently, and was really confused why these people that were successful at losing weight, why wouldn't they keep this weight off? So he began conducting a study, and he developed a set of questions. And one of the questions that he asked people was, what age were you when you started gaining weight? What age were you when you became sexually active? And one of the individuals reported that they became sexually active at age 5. Well, he thought, this kind of floored him after all these years in medicine and at this big company. He had never met anyone that was a product of incest. So he added this question to everybody that he spoke to. And his whole research team found that a lot of these individuals that were putting this weight back on had been molested or raped at an early age. And this was adding to their life. Now, these individuals were not even from lower class or a different race. These were middle class, white individuals from San Diego, California that were very successful and seemed like they were doing really well. And what the research found was that these individuals that were most likely to have other health and mental health issues due to these early childhood traumas. Now, this is a huge research study, and as much as I would love to share all of the results with everyone, I've included a link in the PowerPoint that you can go and read a little bit more about it. But basically, to sum it up, is these individuals that were suffering from obesity also had other things, like they were more likely to smoke. They were more likely to have attempted suicide, not just thought about suicide. They actually attempted suicide. These people were more likely to have had, a divorce, more likely to have had other problems in their life. And so if we think about these individuals that were, middle class, white individuals, hardworking, and what they are dealing with, it gives you a better understanding of the people that we're coming in contact with and what they've dealt with in their life. And you can take the ACEs study yourself to see what your ACEs score would be, or just simply read about that at that link. That's a CDC link that I've included. So let's get to the real reason that we're here. We're going to define what a crisis is. We're going to learn to recognize the 4 stages of crisis escalation, review techniques to prevent crisis escalation, and learn non-physical intervention. So a crisis can be defined or described as a situation in which one or 2 threats are present. The first threat, harm to self or harm to others. So if we simply think about a crisis in these terms, a crisis can only be defined if there is harm to self or harm to others. More specifically, a crisis is more specifically defined as a state of disequilibrium whereby an individual's normal level of functioning is disrupted by an event or series of events. This crisis state is usually temporary in nature, but during the crisis there is a greater risk of decompensation or unsafe behavior from the person experiencing the crisis. So when somebody is in not stable state and they have a greater risk of decompensating, I want you all to focus on the thought that there is a greater risk of decompensation when we talk about the 4 levels of crisis development. So the 4 levels of crisis development for anyone is first the anxiety level, moving into the defensive level, the acting out level, and the tension reduction level. So the first level of crisis development is the anxiety level. So when an individual starts into the anxiety level, you will see an increase or change in the behavior. They are a person that their reason and logic are still present at this level. So you're still able to talk to them. They're still able to think about what's going on, make decisions, but they're starting to change their behavior a little bit. Our appropriate response at this level is to be supportive. So the way that we do that is we're going to be empathetic. We're going to avoid criticizing, condemning, or complaining. We're going to use reflective statements, show genuine interest to them. It's really good if you can use his or her name at that point. You know, John, I understand that you're upset. That would be using his or her name and reflective statements. I understand that you're upset. Let's make a plan together and, you know, let me help you with this. Speak in terms of his or her interests. So at this level, like I said, they're able to still reason. They're able to still make decisions. At this level as well, you're able to be supportive enough so the crisis doesn't continue. If the crisis continues, people move in from the anxiety level to the defensive level. At this level, individuals are starting to lose their rationality. They're becoming belligerent, hostile. Maybe they're swearing or yelling. Reason and logic are not present at this time. So at this level, when people are becoming hostile or belligerent, they are not able to make decisions. Their reason and logic are not there, so you're not able to talk to them or debate with them. There's no debating. At this level, we have to be direct. We have to set clear, simple, enforceable limits with them. So, John, I appreciate that you're upset, but this is what I need from you. I need this, this, and this. Be objective and reasonable. Offer choices. Also at this level, we want to offer them or appear that we're offering that individual a choice. Like, we can talk about this now, or how about if I come back at a later time? We want to redirect. We want to use nonverbal communication. The key skills needed at this level is the ability to set limits and to be assertive but not aggressive. And we'll talk about assertive and passive later on. When an individual reaches the defensive level, the effective response can be broken down into some more detail. For instance, why? Who are you? If the person's asking you who you are, you want to give them information right away. You don't want to then question them back. You want to make sure that you're giving clear responses. If there is ability to give choice to them, like you can do this or this, that's the best thing as well. It's best to allow this individual to vent if they become belligerent or they're swearing. It's best just to let them vent. Don't argue with them. Use lulls as opportunity to redirect. So as they become quiet, you can redirect them at that time, but you want to just let them vent. At this level as well, you're still able to turn the crisis around. So the crisis does not have to move into the next level. You're still able to control the situation and move into before it moves into the next level. At this level as well, because the individual, it's called the defensive level, that individual is becoming defensive, it's very easy for us to slip into our own crisis at this level. It's very easy for us to become defensive because when somebody that we're talking to is defensive, we become defensive. If you think about any time that you've had a fight with your spouse, we'll say, for them messing up the kitchen, they become defensive. Well, you're messy too. Well, no, I'm not as messy as you. You become defensive as well. So it's easy to slip into our own crisis. It's also noted that at this level, how you say it is more important than what you say. So your compassion, your ability to let them vent, offering them choices, being reasonable, being objective, is more important at this level than actually what you're telling the person, because they aren't overly focusing on what you're saying as much as your body posture and how you say it. At this level as well, it's very important with body level and body language that you commit to a softer body language. And one of the ways that you can do that is instead of palms up, so you don't want to put your hands in front of your face palms up, you want to kind of have your palms down. You can have your hands out in front of you, but palms down. Palms down gives a calm down message. Palms up makes you very like you're bringing it on, like you're ready for a fight. So you want to posture yourself with your palms down. 5 characteristics that deteriorate at the second level of crisis is, again, I want to wrap this up as logic, predictable behavior, rationality, objectivity, communication, and focusing on broad spectrum. So at this level, these things are starting to deteriorate. Individuals can only focus on one thing. They're not able to really communicate effectively how they're feeling. They're becoming angry. And knowing the difference between right and wrong is starting to deteriorate. The next level is the acting out level. So as you can see, my friend here with the chair above his head, the acting out level is when people become physically aggressive. They're starting to lose total control. Our appropriate response to that is our nonviolent physical intervention to ensure safety. So the key skill needed is to simply remove the individuals. If there's other individuals with that person, remove them from the room, call mobile crisis or 911. So if somebody is becoming physically aggressive, it's not appropriate then to stand there and talk down. It's too late. The crisis has escalated. That individual has lost total control, and there's going to be no ability to bargain with that person. They have lost total ability to reason. They're not able to comprehend what you're saying. They become in a state where you're not able to communicate with them. Five levels of dangerous behavior. So if we look at this chart, level 1 is the agitated behavior. That's when these are the physical basics of when is somebody going to move into that acting out level. So if you observe people with a clenched fist, drumming fingers, rocking back and forth, maybe like rubbing their legs, kind of dancing back and forth, you know that they're at the level 1 of agitated behavior. A lot of us were trained as children even that if you see somebody that is kind of agitated on the street, you don't make eye contact with them. However, during my crisis training, and something that I try to tell as many people as I can about is we want to keep our eye on those people. So I was trained in the crisis area to make eye contact with those people, because if you keep eye contact with them and you're able to observe their behavior, you kind of know what they're going to do. So that was kind of interesting for me to think about, because I'd always been trained when somebody is kind of odd on the street or causing a ruckus, you don't want to look at them. But if you're not looking at them, you're also not prepared with what's going to happen. So if you start observing people's body language, you kind of know where the next step is going. So in this level 1, like I said, if you're approaching someone, they have a clenched fist already, they're already rocking back and forth, kind of irritated, you know that we're already in that acting out level now, and you know to remove yourself from the situation before the situation gets worse. The level 2 is maybe they're already yelling, screaming, cursing, pacing. Level 3, increasing in motor activity. They're moving around more. They're pushing over things. They have intent to destroy property. This is a place where we cannot intervene with them. And the last level is tension reduction level. So in this level, people are starting to calm down from the peak of their energy output. Their breathing is starting to return to normal. Their muscles are starting to relax. They may be experiencing fear or remorse. They feel bad. When people get to the acting out level, they start losing rationality, is what we talked about. Now their rationality is beginning to repair, and they're starting to feel remorseful and bad for what happened. The best approach to this is the use of silence. We want to try to establish rapport with those individuals. Continue being assertive but not aggressive. And ask individuals to take a few deep breaths. That relaxes and tests self-control. So in our personal lives, in our professional lives, this is a good tool to use in any manner. If somebody starts feeling bad for their behavior, they're having an inability to calm down, just ask them to take a few deep breaths, and it relaxes them. The key skills needed here are verbal and nonverbal communication. Again, you want to have palms down to calm down and reestablish rapport with them. And the reestablishing of rapport doesn't necessarily mean that you forgive them for the behavior or now they don't have to, correct whatever you were trying to address to begin with. This just means that you're able to reestablish the relationship. We talk about importance of listening. So we talked about the importance of observing the physical stance of people and the physical output of what people are doing by their body language. But when we talk about the importance of listening, nobody has really been trained in how to effectively listen. That's just something I've never had, a class in school that says, hey, we're going to learn to effectively listen today. The rules for effective listening are essentially the same as the rules for effective reading. The processes are alike in what they require the mind to do. So whether you're reading or you're listening, you're using the same skills. The listener must somehow sort through the words used and get to the root of the thought that lies behind them. This means discovering what is true regardless of how it is expressed in words. It's necessary to note the statements that convey the main points the speaker is trying to make. And, not everything said is of equal importance. When we're reflecting on crisis, we have to remember that not everything that's happening should be offensive to us. We have to try not to be overly reactive to that. Not everything said is of equal importance, but we have to dig through what the speaker is saying to decide what's important here. What are they really trying to tell me? The listener must make the effort to observe the relation and sequence of the parts as constituting the whole. The listener may display an I care attitude. So you want to offer a caring ear. So to reiterate, assertive behavior, passive behavior, aggressive behavior. An assertive person is the type of interpersonal behavior in which a person stands up for his or her legitimate rights in such a way that the rights of others are not violated. So assertive behavior is honest, it's direct, it's appropriate expression of your feelings, beliefs, and opinions. It communicates respect, not defense, for the other person, although not necessarily for that person's behavior. So when we talk about interacting with individuals in crisis, we want to make sure that we're assertive, but we're not aggressive. Aggressive is that type of interpersonal behavior in which a person stands up for his or her legitimate rights in such a way that the rights of others are violated. So when we think about the grocery store and standing in line, maybe you have something to do, you only have 2 items, and you're trying to check out at the grocery store. You are about to get in line when somebody steps in front of you that has 38 items in the 10 items or less. So an assertive statement would be, I have to get back to work. I appreciate if you would let me go before you because I only have 2 items and we're in the 10 item or less line. An aggressive person might swear, curse, point out all of the person's negative attributes before they're able to pay for their groceries. In either situation, the person might feel offended, but the assertive behavior, if you conduct yourself right, that person probably is going to say, yeah, go ahead in front of me. You only have 2 things. I understand. A passive type of behavior is that type of interpersonal behavior which enables the person's rights to be violated by another. So the passive individual is the person that has the 2 items and stands behind the person with the 38 items and becomes angry inside but never voices their opinion or their ability to stand up for their rights. So they just wait it out. Maybe they have nothing to do, so they're not really being passive. They're just being patient. But that person would be a passive behavior. So it's important when somebody is in crisis that we don't slip into that defensive stance and that defensive level of crisis ourselves and become aggressive and violent and swearing back at these individuals. So assertive behavior is ideas to keep in mind. Assertive behavior is often confused with aggressive behavior. Assertive behavior aims at equalizing the balance of power. So the goal is there to say, hey, I only have 2 items. You have 38. Let me go in front of you, and this is why. You have the right to let others know that their behavior bothers you. Remember, others have a right to respond to your assertiveness with their own wants, needs, feelings, and ideas. So if you are going to ascertain assertive behavior, you also have to be prepared for that person to also be assertive towards you. An assertive encounter may involve negotiating an agreeable compromise, and assertive body language includes maintaining direct eye contact, maintaining an erect posture, speaking clearly, making sure you do not have a whiny quality to your voice, using facial expressions and gestures, and add emphasis to your words. So we always want to conduct ourselves in an assertive manner. We talked about body language and violence. Let's talk about verbal cues for violence. Obviously, if somebody says to you, I'm going to hurt you, that's a direct verbal warning. So if somebody says, here at the Community Guidance Center, we have a partial hospitalization program for children. I've been in a room with children that said, I'm going to throw scissors at you. Well, I probably should leave the room because what's going to happen is somebody's going to throw scissors at me. I've had the direct verbal warning. Also, demanding, threatening, loudness. Their speech will be clipped and pressured. So maybe only saying half of a statement, speaking very fast, or they're using morose silence. So there's absolutely no words being exchanged at all. You can just observe their physical stance becoming more aggressive and rigid, but there's no words being exchanged. Maybe they're having short yeses and nos, easily frustrated by no's, and having vocabulary cues. Again, the nonverbal cues for violence we talked about facial expressions, their jaw will be tense, clenched teeth, biting, frowning, dilated pupils, quivering, shallow rapid breathing. Their body language is withdrawn. Maybe it's rigid in their extremities, clenched fist, shift in positions, pounding, kicking. Again, remember, it's very important to maintain eye contact and know exactly where that person is in their body posture. So this is an acronym, Rethink Conflict Management. You want to recognize when you are angry and learn to help yourself relax. A great way to do that is by deep breathing in the situation, removing yourself from the situation. If you're becoming angry, if you're becoming stressed, if you feel yourself slipping into that defensive level when you're going to be becoming angry and yelling, it's best to recognize that in yourself, maybe make an appointment to revisit that individual at another time and not slip into your own crisis. Emphasize by considering the situation from the person's point of view. Remember, emphasizing and thinking in your head, what's happened to this person, not what's wrong with them. What is this person going through right now? What have they experienced in the past that maybe I don't understand? And instead of just judging them and what's wrong with them. Think about how you may be contributing to the problem. Hear what the consumer or the person is saying by listening to feelings as well as words. Remember digging through those statements, including I statements. Use sentences that begin with I feel. Remember that is a reflective nature in communication. If we use I statements and I understand statements, that softens the conversation and develops a good conversation. Negotiate. Try to work things out to everyone's satisfaction. So if you're okay with A and B, giving them the ability to pick A or B and that ability to negotiate really resolves a lot of conflict. Show kindness even when expressing anger. And the choices for managing conflict. Command clear directions and specifically state what you want to do. So be sure that we're always using that assertive nature and we're giving people clear understandings of what we expect of them. Use non-sarcastic humor or do the unexpected to diffuse a situation. Sometimes people are able to calm down if we start talking about something that we have in common, maybe a movie or a TV show that we enjoy. Offer choices. Give a choice between two options. Ignore, choose not to address the conflict or unacceptable behavior. So if you meet with Johnny every week and Johnny has had some issues in the past and has controlled the situation by always threatening to do something that is just his nature, choose not to address that conflict and move on to the conversation at hand. Also identifying if Johnny moves into the next level of crisis, then you can't ignore it. But, understanding an individual is helpful in a crisis. Compromise. Seek a solution that satisfies both parties. Encourage problem solving, explore the disagreement, and generate alternatives, and structure the environment. Rearrange people, places, or things to reduce conflict. So if you know that somebody becomes angry every Tuesday when you approach them, maybe if you need to talk to them on that day or if you know that this is going to elicit an angry response, maybe giving them a heads up in the morning by calling them and saying, hey, I'm going to stop by, or just talking to them on the phone and not in person is an option to structure the environment. So 10 tips for crisis prevention. To wrap it all up, be empathetic, not judgmental. clarify messages, use silence and reflective statements, respect an individual's personal space, and you can also ask them to respect your personal space. Be aware of body posture. Remember, palms down to send a calm down message. Palms up means bring it on, or I'm ready for a fight. Permit venting. Use lulls for redirection. Allow there to be silence if that is what the situation needs. Pressuring speech and interrupting people with messages that they're not ready to hear will just send them into the next level of crisis. So permit some silence, permit venting if that's what is needed. Set clear and concise limits. Avoid overreacting. Remain calm and professional. Ignore challenging questions. Do not argue and avoid power struggles. It's very important that we don't become easily offended or become easily aggravated and move into our own crisis. And keep nonverbal cues non-threatening. If anybody has any questions or anything now, we're going to move into the question and answer session. I've also included my name and my phone number here at work and my email address. If somebody would need anything or have additional questions later on, feel free to reach out and talk to me at that time. All the PowerPoints will be sent out after the presentation. I believe, Gail, is that correct?
Yeah. We're going to send out all of this information. It will probably happen later this week, so just give us a couple of days to get it loaded up on our website. And now we are going to open up the line for people to ask questions.
The conference has been unmuted.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Barnhart?
Well, if nobody has any questions,
Thank you.
thank you. I think we'll be concluding our presentation. I hope everyone is well and takes care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So long.
Thank you.
So,